Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Ian Faree, founder of Pluto LMS. In today's webinar, we're going to discuss user communication with Pluto LMS. And today is the 6th of October, 2021. There may be a few more joining us. For those that are here, thank you so much. And let's dive right into it. So in today's agenda for user communication, we're going to discuss messaging within Pluto LMS, how announcements work. We're going to talk about forums, course forums. We're going to talk about the language translation tool that we have. And we're also going to give you some tips around Zapier and API and how you can use that for communication. And then lastly, we're going to do a Q&A session where you can actually post your messages in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. Great, so starting off with messaging. So messaging within Pluto LMS is effectively a site-wide inbox. You can think of this like a Telegram or a WhatsApp. It's basically a built-in messaging tool within your LMS environment. So it's really an email alternative. So instead of your messages getting lost in someone's Gmail or Outlook inbox, it's just a central location for you to message your students. It allows for better user collaboration, and it's a built-in inbox inside of the tool. And really this is beneficial because it allows all of the information to be housed in your learning management system. Anything education related, anything communication wise with your course instructor or with your students is all housed in one central location. So diving into the live environment, I just wanted to show you what this actually looks like. So when a user has logged into the system, right now we're seeing a site admin, but this will be the same for a student. So effectively on the top right, when you do get a message, you'll see a little red icon over here showing that there's an unread message. And this allows you to actually communicate with various users. So if we just click on Teacher Tracy, for example, this might be a team member of yours. It will actually display whether this user is online or offline, and you'll actually see a communication thread as you see over here. And at the bottom, you can write a message, you can add, emoticons, etc. So a really nice, easy tool to use just in terms of messaging your users. There are three little icons over here. So what this is going to give you, you can look at the user info, you can start the conversation, you can even block the user, mute the user, delete conversation. And if they're not part of your contacts, you can add them to contacts. So if someone is not part of your contacts, by default, they're not going to be able to actually message you. So you can only message someone who's part of your contact list. So that's quite nice, just to prevent anyone from messaging you. And then just going back, if you do have course groups, for example, they can communicate in groups. These are the start conversations that you may have. You might want to pin, in other words, pin certain conversations. That's quite nice. And if you click on contacts, you can see which contacts you have over here, any contact requests. So if someone sends you a contact request, it will come through over here. And if you don't want to just work in this right-hand navigation bar, on the bottom, you can click on See All, and that will actually just expand your messaging interface as you see over here. So if you prefer to work on a bigger screen, if we click on Instructor Eva over here, you can see her messages in a bigger format. Great, so that's simply the messaging tool, really nice and easy to communicate with users. And what will happen is they'll get a notification, an online notification, so it will actually pop up on the LMS site, and if enabled, they will also get an email notification. So just something with regards to the communication and preferences. If you're a user on the system, whether a student or an instructor or an admin, there's a little gear icon over here. When you click on that gear icon, it'll actually ask you for your preferences. So you can restrict who can message you. So you can say, I only want contacts to message me, or you can open it up to the entire platform. It's dependent on your preferences. And you can also turn off email notifications. So you may have 1,000 students on your platform, for example, and you may be the course instructor for all of those students. You can, there might be a lot of messages that come through. You can turn off email preference notifications, and then that way you're not going to be disturbed inside of your email client, so to speak. You can turn that off. So there are some settings over here. There are also site-wide settings with messaging, and I'll show you that over here. So if you're a site admin and you click on site admin and you look at the messaging settings over here, so it's really nice. If you click on messaging settings, you can actually turn off your messaging system. So you may not want messaging to be available on your LMS system for whatever reason you may have. Perhaps you don't want students messaging instructors, etc. You can actually turn this off. So that is an option to you. And you can also enable or disable site-wide messaging. So effectively, it just allows people to message each other site-wide. If enable, users can view a list of all users on the site, or you can limit that. So the preferences are actually up to you. So there's a lot of versatility in that regard. And if we go back to site admin, you can actually also change the notification defaults. In other words, the notification settings. So there's 3 forms of notifications within Pluto LMS. Namely a web notification. So that will be something that pops up on the right hand side over here. So you may get a notification over here. You can turn those off on for each specific item that you see over here. And you can decide whether it's a web notification only, an email notification only, or a mobile app notification. Or you can enable all, or only 2 of 3, or 1 of 3. You can decide your preferences here. So the defaults are pretty standard, but if you do want to change them, it is possible. So using an example, let's say you wanted to notify students whenever they received a badge, but you didn't want that to go to them as an email. You only want it to go to them as a web notification. You can actually untick the email column over here. So this is under email. You can untick both of those and then only allow for web notifications. Now, the difference between online and offline is when the user is logged in, they are online, and if they're not logged into the system, they're offline. So in other words, you may want to say, send the user a badge notification when they receive it if they're online. However, if they're offline, send them an email. So you can toggle between those two depending on your preferences. Or you can have it delivered both online and offline as a web notification, or only when they're offline as an email. So it's up to you how you want to use that. Same for messaging. So if we just scroll down a bit, so messaging between users, you could set the default that, no email notifications go through. You want to turn on the mobile app for notifications and then only web notifications. The list goes on, but that's how you would use this tool. So in a nutshell, that is messaging and a little bit of notification preferences on your platform. The next thing we're going to talk about is announcements. So what are announcements? So the difference between an announcement and a message is an announcement is more of a broadcast. An announcement is something within your course that allows you to actually send out a broadcast to that entire course. You can also do this at a site-wide level, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then obviously you have the benefit of having this all in a central location. So again, if the email gets lost inside of the user's email client, perhaps they have 1,000 unread Gmail messages and your broadcast gets lost, the nice thing is when they log into the system, they will still see your announcements. So all the information is centralized. So if I just go into the platform here and we go back to the home page, what announcements looks like is at a site-wide level, it's disabled by default. So if we head over to Site Admin and I click on Homepage Display, perhaps you want to show the users that have logged in an announcements thread. So what you can do is enable announcements on your homepage, and then when you save changes and that updates for you, when you go back home, you'll see now there's a new site news section created. So what's really nice about this is this allows you to broadcast messages to your entire LMS system. So what you can do is add a topic, and you'll see that this interface opens up for you. And then what's quite nice is you can decide, there's formatting tools over here. It's kind of like working with Microsoft Word. So there's different formatting tools available to you. You can set a subject. So welcome to our new LMS ! And then you might want to give someone that's logging into the system an introductory message. So this will be the first thing they see when they log in. We hope you enjoy our new way of learning. Great. So I'm going to say post. So what this is going to do, it's going to post it to your site news. So when we go home, you will actually see that post. So when a user logs into your system, they will see that post. You may want to also embed a video in here. You might want to link them to important resources to get started. This is up to you. So the courses are above it, but what you can do, if you go to Site Admin again, Homepage Display, you can change the order. So I might want announcements first and then then show courses. When I save changes, and I just wanted to note something, this is for when the user is logged in. At the moment, none of this is displayed to anyone who is not logged in. You can display this to non-logged in users. It is optional. It is up to you. So having announcements first, if I go to the home page, what you'll see is the order has now moved. So you can see the announcements are shown up first and then your courses. So it's up to you how you wish to display this. You can edit the post as well, but it's quite useful, particularly for site news. You might want to link them to the mobile app, embed a video, add an image, etc. It depends on what you want to actually showcase on the platform. And then users can subscribe to these announcements by clicking on that button over there. So these are announcements at a site-wide level. If we go into a course, I'm just going to go into an example course over here. By default, every time you create a course, there will be this announcements activity over here. So what this is, these are course-specific announcements. So when you add a post or a new discussion inside of your course announcements, these are not broadcast to the entire site. These are not shown to the entire site. These are only shown to the actual users who are enrolled into this specific course. So this announcement is limited to the users of the course. So that's quite nice. If you have specific courses that have specific requirements around announcements, you can use that through a course announcement and not a site-wide announcement. So that becomes useful, particularly if you're segmenting your users. You have different announcements for different course types, etc. This becomes quite handy, and it's the same editor as we saw before. And this allows your students to also reply to your announcements within the course. Very similar to forums, but I'll show you the difference when we do get to forums later in this webinar. But this gives you the opportunity for your students to reply. So if they hit reply, there's a box they can reply. If they do want more editing options, if they click on advanced, then it will bring up the editor and they can reply to your announcements. You can turn this off, but it does give you the option for users to reply to you. They can also add an attachment. Perhaps you're talking about something that requires an attachment. They can add attachments as well. It also gives the user the ability to reply privately, meaning that other users within the course will not see their response. This is all optional to you. Great. So that is course announcements as well as site-wide announcements in a nutshell. The next thing we're going to talk about is forums. So what are forums? So very similar to announcements in that it's the same interface. Users are still going to get notified. There's still the possibility for users to respond to these forums. The only difference is the forums are placed anywhere within a course, and I'll show you what that looks like. So effectively, it allows for user communication within a course, and again, central location, but it also allows for social learning and interactive learning. And I'll show you some of the advantages of this when we create a sample forum. So diving back into the platform, if I go to a sample course, let's just go to this first one over here. To add a forum, we're going to click on edit course material, and then you can decide where you want the forum to go. So if you are creating different topics, you've got topic 1, topic 2, you might want to engage with the learners through social learning, and that way you can actually add course content and then add a forum. So when you add a forum, this gives you a bit more flexibility. So this, for example, you might want to have a forum for every module. So I'm just going to call this forum 1 discussion. The name is completely up to you. You can give it a description and display it on the course page, but you don't have to. And then the nice thing about forums is you can change the different types. So you've got a single, just a simple discussion. There's each person can post one separate discussion. There's a Q&A forum, so questions and answers. You can display it in a blog-like format, or just a normal general standard forum. So the options are available to you. I'm going to show you what a standard forum looks like. That's the default option. So it's just the way that the forum is displayed to the users. There are various settings that you can actually implement. It's up to you. We're not going to go over these in too much detail, but the defaults will do the trick for you. And if you want to get more advanced, there are various options. So what I'm going to do now is click on Save and Display. So what that's going to do is create this forum, and then this will allow you to add a discussion topic. So you might want to say, so let's just say difficulties with the content in module 1. So you might want to have what were you struggling with? Let's help one another. So you might want to have a forum that just allows the students or the end users to post questions and just create a discussion and post anything that they were struggling with. This is really nice. So if we just say post to forum, this is really nice because this allows your students to engage with one another. And instead of receiving, 50 emails asking the same question, for example, where do I find the template for this particular assignment? Let's say that's a common question. What's really nice about this is if one student answers that other student, or if you answer that student, everyone will see the answer. So this just eliminates the back and forth requirements of email, and it just saves you a lot of time because you can communicate once and then everyone in the course can actually see your communication. So the whole idea and the whole benefit of forums is just to reduce the amount of direct emails or direct messages that you get, because if the information is central, it's visible to everyone, it's really advantageous because it's going to give them the ability to self-serve and help themselves in the course. Just wanted to show you a course format. So we've got various types of formats within Pluto LMS, and one of the course formats is a social format. So the social format is simply a timeline view of forums. So instead of having actual content in the course, you might want to have a community type course or a community group as a course. This just allows you to post different forum messages, different social learnings, etc. in the form of a timeline. So that's a course type within Pluto LMS. This is just really useful for these sort of public or online communities, and you can do that within your LMS environment. And when I mentioned the other format, so if we go back to the list format, you can have your forum posted anywhere within your course. That's the nice thing about using the topics format versus the social format. Social format is just forums, whereas the topic format allows you to create multiple forums in different parts of your course. So as the user navigates through your course, let's say at the end of module 1, they get to the discussion, post their questions, and then they can move on from there. So that was forums in a nutshell. The next thing we're going to talk about is language translation. So what is language translation? This allows the user to view the LMS environment with their own language. So they can log in, set their language preferences, and then the user interface is translated for yourself as an admin user, and also for the end user. This just allows easy navigation and ease of access through getting around your platform. So if I just go back to the home page, when a user logs in, they'll have the option to actually change their language. So for example, if I go to site admin and I am a Spanish speaking person and your other site admin or team member is Spanish speaking, you can set your individual language preferences with this little globe icon over here. So there are quite a range of different languages. By default, you're going to get the English United States version when you log into the system. But if you're Spanish speaking, for example, we can change it to Spanish. So that will then translate your platform into Spanish. So the navigation items within your menu, etc., will translate to Spanish for you, which is quite nice. And if we go back to English, we'll see that it translates back to English. So this little icon here just helps with the navigation and the interface in terms of getting a localized version of the LMS environment. And this is at an individual level. So you can have 100 different users on the platform, and 50 may be English speaking, 20 may be Spanish, 20 may be Portuguese, for example. You can then, and the last 10 might be French. They can set those preferences at an individual level, so you don't have to force site-wide language to the user. So that's quite nice, so each user can have their own preference. That being said, you can adjust the language settings on a site-wide level. So let's say you are a French company and you service only French users and everyone on the platform is French. So it makes sense to set the default to French. We also have Canadian French, which is quite nice. So there's Canadian French and European French, so the option is available to you. So you can set that as a default should you wish. So you can change the default settings. Users can still change their personal preferences, but this is just the default for when the account gets created for the first time. So that's languages at a site-wide level. But what if you have a language academy and maybe you're teaching different languages? You might be teaching English, you might be teaching Afrikaans, French, Spanish, etc. You can actually have each course translated as well. So if I go into a sample course, and I just want to turn editing off here, what's quite nice is if I head over to course admin and I go to settings, if you scroll down, there's the appearance option. So you can decide whether or not you force a language. So just to explain how this works, at a site-wide level, users can adjust their language preferences. And if you've got do not force, the language preference of the user will be shown to them for that course. So it's not going to force any language. If the user is Spanish logging into this course, they'll see Spanish. If they're French logging into this course, they'll see French. That's do not force. And obviously, if you're an English instructor, you'll see English. However, you may want to force a language. So let's say you're teaching Dutch. You might want to actually select Dutch, force the language, and then even if it's an English-speaking user, because it will enhance the learning of that student, if you're forcing Dutch, then even an English-speaking language logging into this particular course, which is teaching Dutch, will see the Dutch interface. So if I force Dutch and I click on Save and Display, your content, and I just wanted to make a reference here, the content that you upload to the system will not be translated. However, your actual navigation and the menu options within this course will be translated to the language that you've forced. So if we just go back to the settings over here, you'll see a lot of the settings buttons, navigation buttons have all translated to French. So really what we want to do now is say, okay, well, we don't want to force this language. Save and display, and then that will revert you back to the English interface. So what I meant by the course content is if you're uploading a video and you're naming an activity in English, it's going to remain in English. So the language tool does not translate your content. We are working on content translation, but if you're uploading a PDF, for example, that PDF is going to remain in English. Obviously, if you're teaching Dutch or French and you're forcing the language and your content is also French, it will be displayed in French as well. So that's quite nice. Great, that was the language translation in a nutshell. The next thing I wanted to discuss was how Zapier and the API can work with user communication. So what is Zapier? Zapier is really nice because it's a platform that allows you to connect to 3,000 plus different applications without writing a single line of code. So if you want to connect Facebook to Pluto LMS, or you want to connect Outlook or Gmail, or you want to use a tool like MailChimp, for example, you can connect this all to Pluto LMS through Zapier, and you don't need a programmer to create that integration for you. API is an application programming interface. The API just gives you the ability to write your own code and connect to the system without the need for Zapier. But typically, if you don't have a developer and you don't understand code, we recommend the Zapier route. We do have separate webinars on this. So if you look on our YouTube channel, we do discuss Zapier and API in length. For the purposes of this webinar, I'm just going to show you some of the possibilities of user communication with regards to Zapier alone. And this way, we can just show you what you can do with Zapier and Pluto LMS and various applications, and we'll talk over that briefly. But really, the benefit of this is to automate messaging. And what I mean by that is, up until now, we've shown you the system, everything is manual. So if you want to message one of your colleagues or a student, you have to go into the platform, go into their profile and send them a message. That's all manual. What's really nice with a different form of communication through Zapier, as the example here, or through an API, depending on your connection preferences, is you can connect various apps to Pluto LMS and automate messaging. So that's really nice. And to use an example, let's say you're a MailChimp user. For those that don't know, MailChimp is a campaigns emailing tool. So it allows you to bulk message emails, pretty looking emails, HTML emails, typically your emails with images in them, etc. MailChimp's a really nice tool to use for broadcasting those emails. But there might be an automation that you want to use. And an example that I've used here is, let's say someone clicks on your MailChimp campaign. You might want to send them a message inside of Pluto LMS. So let's say you send out a campaign that says, click here to enroll into the course, etc. And what will happen is when the user clicks on that link, you can actually send them a message inside of Pluto LMS. So when they go to the LMS, they'll see that a message has been sent to them, and you can choose who that message is from, etc., and who that message goes to. In this case, it would be the MailChimp user, and there's various automations you can actually set up with that. So there are over 3,000 different applications that you can connect to Pluto LMS. But to give you another example, Slack, also a very popular messaging tool, typically used intercompany, might be an internal messaging system. And within Slack, you can post messages to channels, for example. So you might want to message someone in Slack, but you also want them to get a Pluto LMS message. So one of the automations here is every time you post a new message to a channel, send the message to the user. That is a possibility. So we do have a separate webinar on Zapier and API, and it covers it in quite extensive detail, but I just wanted to show you the possibilities with regards to user communication. Great. So now we're going to jump into a Q&A session. So I see that some questions have come through already. But you can use this opportunity to post any messages into the chat, and I'll be glad to assist. So how are users notified when posting announcements? Good question. So if we just go back to the LMS environment, let's say someone has subscribed to your forum, your site-wide forum. When you post this message, they'll obviously see it when they log into the LMS, but they'll also receive an email. So once you post the message and they've subscribed to it, they will receive an email saying that you've posted this message, and they'll receive that in their email inbox. Great. So we have another question here. How do I manage forum preferences for communication? Great question. So if we go to a forum, let's go to the one that we created earlier on in the webinar, Module 1 Discussion. Let's click on that. So on the top right here, there are options that allow you to manage your subscription. So what optional subscription versus forced subscription means, and just talking about those two as a simplified example here, you can give them an optional description, meaning that they won't be notified every time there's a forum message if they don't intentionally subscribe to that forum. However, you can force the subscription so that every time there's a message in that forum, this does go out to all of the course users. So it's completely up to you how you wish to set that up. So you can manage the subscriptions in that way. Then we got a question, how are users notified in forums? So exactly the same way as announcements. If they subscribe, they're going to get an email notification. Good. So another question here. I have just over 1,000 students. Can I set up alerts if users are messaging inappropriate content to one another? That is an excellent question and something we didn't cover in this webinar. If you go to Site Admin and we go to Reports, there is a spam cleaner. So what's really nice about the spam cleaner tool is you can either search for keywords that exist. So you might have a specific word that you want to search for, and then when you search for these keywords, it's going to bring up a list of the messages that contain these bad words. Alternatively, we can, if you send us a list of words that you wish to auto-detect, then the system will auto-detect these spam patterns. So if there's a list that you have, you can send that through to us. We add it in via the backend, and then what this will do is generate the list for you. So every time there is a word, this will actually be the report and the dashboard that will allow you to see those inverted commas bad messages, so to speak. So that's really nice to help with controlling user communication, helping to prevent bullying, for example. It's not foolproof, but it's going to give you the dashboard and the option to help omit some of those communications. Will the language tool translate my content? Good question. So we covered this slightly earlier in that if you're uploading content to the LMS, that won't be translated. However, the user interface will. So for example, if you're uploading a English PDF and you're uploading that file to the system's not going to translate your PDF in the same way that if you're embedding a YouTube video which is in English, the system is not going to translate that video audio into French, for example. So the content is not translated. We are working on content translation in terms of text that you add to the platform will be translated in the future, but it's just the user interface and navigation that is translated. Good. Looks like the last question here. How do I connect Pluto LMS to Zapier? Great question. So we have a support doc on that, and I will show you exactly step by step. What I'm going to actually do is post it in that link into the chat for you. Just 1 second. Great. Cool. So you've got that link now. That's the support doc for connecting Pluto LMS to Zapier. And we also have a webinar which covers that in detail. Excellent. Thanks so much for your time, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. We will see you same time next week. Thank you very much. Have a great day further for those that are in the morning, and have a good evening for those that are ending their day. Cheers, everybody.